So my name is Karolina Wlazło-Malinowska. I am the coordinator for the Immersions project, which entails a partnership of 4 different organizations across Europe. It is a project co-funded by the European Union, and it forms a European hybrid music network for cultural peripheries. It is an effort that aims at promoting the electronic music in cultural spaces outside the main cultural hubs. The scope of our entire project runs between 2023 and 2027, and it entails over 40 various music events and activities, including educational activities as the one that we are about to begin, the second hybrid electronic music workshop. Immersions was created by the partnership of 4 organizations. So the first one is the FOMO project Pogotowie Kulturalno-Społeczne from Poland, with this workshop partnering with the project New Hope DJ School in Białystok, Poland, the Monument Music from Oslo, Norway, Kablis Ułapnowista from Vilnius, Lithuania, and Gare Club from Porto, Portugal. Our strategic partner in this endeavor is Electrum Holding, which is a leader in the climate tech sector, which enables us to run our activities on a lower and carbon footprint and in a more sustainable way. So with this introduction, I welcome all the participants, our artist, Michał Wolski, in his presentation titled Introduction to the World of Modular Systems. And I will now give the floor to Paulius from Vilnius, who is the moderator of the Q&A session and of the whole meeting, and who will introduce our artists. So I give the floor to Vilnius. You have to unmute yourself for this.
Hello, so do you hear me? Yes. Okay, cool. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of Immersions workshop. My name is Paulius. Please do not alarm yourself. My voice is always like that. We are coming live to you from legendary Kablis Club from Vilnius, Lithuania. Tonight's topic is the introduction to the world of modular systems. For this, we have invited a very special guest, Pan Michał Wolski. He is one of the best known electronic music artists from Poland. He is a DJ, a producer, a journalist, a radio host, mastering engineer, and also a teacher. So his work is published on numerous releases throughout the world on labels such as Blank State, Iri, Nonplus, Semantica, and many others. So without further ado, I give the floor to Pan Michał, and have at it.
First of all, please let me say thank you to all the organizers, to the managers of the project for inviting me here. It's a pleasure for me, huge pleasure, to visit this place, to be here, and to be able to share the way how I understand this. May I ask for the modular? Yeah, this quite maybe mysterious thing. So it's very nice that I will be able, very nice for me that I will be able to share my understanding of how to work with all these wires and knobs and faders and all these lights, and huge pleasure. So thank you. We will start in a way which is at the very center and the very heart of working with this kind of environment. So during the sound check, I created a short piece which sounds like this. So during the preparations, I created this bunch of sounds, and as I said, I will introduce a part of the process of working with this kind of environment, which leads to simply unpatching the stuff. So everything what was created will disappear, and we will not be able to listen to it anymore. This is quite, for me, magic stuff, that everything what is created with this machine, unless we record it, will disappear. So let's do it. When I was preparing myself for this workshop, I didn't think about introducing this process, but I feel now that it's very important to do it and to show how everything starts when we work with the modular synthesizers and how it ends when the sound will simply disappear. And I didn't record it, this short piece. So now when I move some of these knobs, the story is over and we'll have to create something new. So this is a part of it, yeah? So modular world, modular systems, in fact, maybe not synthesizers, because it's not only about the synthesis, about creating sound. You can build the modular system around the sampling devices, yeah? So we can process sounds, not only create sounds in terms of various methods of synthesizing the sound. So now we have an empty canvas, and we have to start dealing with this quite, I believe it may be quite mysterious machine or world. Is it? Do you feel that it's quite hazy? Yeah, probably. So how could we understand working with this kind of instrument? Because in fact this is a musical instrument, so how can we deal with that? First of all, I would love to present you one of the basic methods of synthesizing the sound. Is let's build simply the subtractive synthesizer using this bunch of modules, and step by step I'll try to show you why we do this or that, and then I hope that we'll understand what is it all about. And I will do my best to show you that this quite magic and quite mysterious world is ruled by extremely simple and basic principles, which, because of going deeper and deeper and deeper, then it becomes really complex, sometimes that complex that we are literally unable to repeat the process. This sound has gone and it will never come back. I am not able to restore it. It's not like a guitar that I can play the melody, yeah? It happened one time and we will probably be able to create something more, maybe quite similar, or with some specific vibe, with the textures, but this story has disappeared. So first of all, let's create this, what I have named the subtractive synthesizer. So what does it mean, subtractive synthesizer? Why subtractive? Because we will subtract, we'll filter out the harmonics, the brightness, or the heaviness of the sound. We will take off a part of the sound using the filter, and that's why this method is called the subtractive synthesis. So to be able to create the sound with this instrument, first we need to have something which generates the waveform, or the sound, the signal, or something what will be recognized by us as a sound, because you'll see that things are a bit more complex. So first of all, let's take just a simple waveform. This is the oscillator, which can work with this frequency or this or that. We can generate the sine wave, very deep, with almost one harmonic, like the fundamental tone. Almost no harmonics here. In the analog domain, it's quite hard to create completely absent of harmonic tones signals. So we can create this kind of sound, just more present, yeah, more aggressive, or this kind of sound. So here we have our generator. This is the oscillator which creates this specific waveform which our mind can recognize as a sound. So to create the subtractive synthesizer, I mentioned that we need the filter, yeah, to filter out this, what is buzzing here, these harmonic tones. So let's do it. So this is what subtractive synthesis is all about filtering the harmonics, making sound dark or bright. We can change the way how we filter the sound. Here we cut all the lowest frequencies. So, the filter is needed in this method, subtractive synthesis, to sculpt the sound. We need the filter to be able to deal with the color of the sound. But we also need the amplifier to make the sound quiet or completely absent or loud. So now we also need something what will allow us to bring the sound to life and to quiet it down. Yes, so sound rises and falls down, to quiet, to silence. So we will use envelope generator. So we will need now something that will allow me to control the things we start to hear. So let's use the envelope generator. Nothing happens. So we need something to launch the envelope generator to simply create this rising and falling like this. But in the electronic domain, I would like to be able, to create some rhythms with it. So let's use a sequencer. This is one of the hearts of the synthesizer. So let's connect the sequencer to my envelope generator. And as you see, completely nothing is happening. Because sequencer needs some data, some information about the tempo, yeah? About when the triggers, and we will talk about them in a moment, should appear and when they shouldn't. So we need to bring this, what in the modular domain is called clock generators or triggers or gates. Now it may be quite still mysterious, but it will become more clear. So let's provide some signals to the sequencer. And now everything is starting being more present and active. All right. So we have the oscillator, we have the filter, which allows me to filter out the harmonics, to sculpt the sound, to make it, as I said, more bright or dark. We have the amplifier, which is being controlled by the envelope generator. Envelope, which means that we have attack and decay, we have rise and fall. Then we have the sequencer, which allows me to create, for instance, rhythmic structures, but also allows us to create tones. That's very simple, very simple. But you see now it's ready for another piece of activities and we can dive deeper and bring something to life. So this is the basic setup which brings to life this idea of subtractive synthesis. The generator and the filter which allows us to filter out the parts of the original waveform. So now we can see that in the modular world, we can recognize two types of signals. And in the Eurorack, because this is the Eurorack format, things are a bit different than in, for instance, the Buchla world. But we focus on Eurorack today. And we can here recognize at this point two types of signals. The one we hear, and then the one we use to control what we hear. In what way? Is it dynamic way or static? Is it bright or dark, fast or slow? Because, like here, we can slow down things or fasten them up. And on the first level of this principle, which I mentioned, that we have audio signals, the signals which are audible, which we can hear, and the signals we can use to control things. On this first layer, we see that I have used the envelope generator to make sound appear and disappear. And this is the very surface of things, because now we can modulate the modulators, we can go very deep and start controlling the controlling signals. So, on one hand, the oscillator, the filter, amplifier, envelope generator, sequencer gives us the timbre of sound, gives us the first glimpse of what is the heart of this system. We can recognize this sound as bright or dark. But on the other hand, we can start developing the way how the controllers behave. And let's stick to this very simple sequence. And let's introduce the LFO, which is a kind of oscillator, because this is in fact an oscillator, nothing else. LFO means the low frequency oscillator. What does it mean, low frequency? Why low frequency? Because the audible range of sounds lays somewhere between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. These are the waves which we can recognize as sound. So why low frequency oscillator? Because, for instance, we want to create the sine wave which cycles in the frequency of the 10th of 1 hertz. Yeah, and 1 hertz means that the one sine wave is created in 1 second. So the 100th of hertz is very slow. And that's why LFO, low frequency oscillator. So let's introduce the LFO to this patch, which we create. Here I can set the tempo, the frequency, and take a look. And this is the meta level, let's say, meta level, when something controls something, what controls the way how we hear the sound. And in fact, we could finish here, because this is all about, about controlling, about creating the signals, changing the signals, changing the way how they interact with the generator. And in fact, we could say that that's all. But this, what I have said a moment ago, that we have created the signal which controls the signal, So this is the meta level. It shows us that in this world, we have only the signal, nothing else. We have simply the signal. And this is where the magic happens. When we start to understand that we have only the functions here, that we start to understand the way how the current flows in the wires, when we start to understand what can do our module, maybe whether it can generate the waveform sound, or whether it can generate, for instance, the envelope. But we should also mention about this that envelope generator when it will be set in the cycle mode, maybe you see this, it's here, cycle. Then it becomes the signal generator, So and now we could use the sequencer to modulate the controlling signal. So take a look. This is the moment where things are getting, or maybe understood as extremely complex. But if we will follow this, what I have shown you, these principles of subtractive synthesis mode, when we will introduce this method to the modular system, and then when we will simply start interrupting the way how the signal flows, then we are at the very heart of the process of creating music with modular systems. So this is like, first we created something very simple, and then step by step we can go into completely unpredictable effects. I have created virtual modular rack for you, which I can share if you would like to deal with, which I would love to have some modules which are waiting for you in this virtual form. But if you try to follow these steps, which we'll talk about again in a moment, if you repeat that and start experimenting with the signals which flow and which we can simply send from one place to another, then the whole story is over and you know how to operate with modular synthesizer, because things are here very simple and logical. They are very basic, in fact. So, honestly, we could finish here and you are ready to work with modular systems. This is really that simple. But it doesn't mean that it's not complex. So the thing which I would really love to keep here in your minds is that modular synthesis is about sculpting the signal, because everything may control everything here. Each part of the modular system can be sent to some other places and influence the way how oscillators, filters, envelope generators, etc. works. So now you see that envelope generator became the oscillator. But the oscillator may become, let's try it, something which will work in a similar way as the envelope generator. So you see, this oscillator works with quite low frequency. And it allows the sound which is generated by this oscillator to be heard, yeah? Because this is happening what we've said a moment before, that it's all about the function which may be realized, created, performed in a different ways. So this module, which is a filter, can also perform a different function than I presented you before. Let's unpatch it. I will use maybe this one. So we have the filter, which filters out the higher harmonics. So the bright sound becomes darker. So now we can use the sequencer, maybe not the sequencer, Now we will use just the LFO, another oscillator, to simply launch the envelope generator. So, do you remember what is envelope generator? This is the unit which allows me to make sound appear and disappear. And now let's plug the envelope into the filter. Let's use this filter. So take a look. First I said that we need an amplifier. And now maybe we can even do it like this. Now you see that I don't need, in fact, an amplifier because the filter performs the function of amplifier in that moment. I simply use the filter as a so-called low-pass gate. Yeah, so now we can work in a different ways with the sound. So we have the signals we hear, we have signals we use to control the signals we hear, but in fact we have only one signal here, which may be used in various forms. And I know that the moment for asking questions later, but I would really love to break this rule and ask you at this moment, you who sit in front of me, do you have any questions to this, what we have discussed in the previous minutes? Is it understandable what we have discussed? Or maybe there are some not yet understandable topics here. Because I would really love to know that at this point everything is clear here. So, let's create the patch from 0. And let's try to do something interesting with this. So first of all, let's use one of my favorite modules, the module which is called the DPO by Make Noise, and it's deeply connected to the way of thinking about the sound designing, which is connected with so-called West Coast synthesis. So let's plug it to the filter. All right. All right. So this is our generator. We have also the filter. let's use this low frequency oscillator as a source of the tempo. So I will send the gates to the sequencer. What does it mean, gate? Gate is a signal for instance, envelope generator, which tells when the envelope should be started. Yeah? So let's turn off all the gates. And now turn them on. You see now this envelope generator is reacting for this signal for the gate. And remember, I said that we have audible signals and the control signals. So in the modular world, we will also control how much of this control signal we will introduce to the module or to the bunch of modules. So here, this knob, oh yeah, you see, there is a CV written. So what does it mean, CV? It means the control voltage. So let's turn it on. Decay of the envelope means how long we'll be able to hear the sound, but attack is about how long the signal, the sound will be rising. I also said a few moments ago that we have this low frequency oscillator, which is an oscillator which can be used to control, but what could we control? We could control, for instance, the way how the generator generates the waveform. Is it getting brighter and darker? At this point, nothing special. Let's use maybe this. So now I use this sine wave, which is generated by the oscillator, by the low frequency oscillator, to control these two elements of the waveform generator, so the oscillator. Now the timbre, the color of the sound changes a bit, but let's go and do something more with that. All right, so let's deal with the filter. And let's use the oscillator which at this point sounds like this. Let's use this oscillator, the unit which we could use to create the audible signal. Let's use it to control the way how the filter works. And now let's start to control the way how this oscillator works. So let's use, you see, we can really go in countless directions and just use, for instance, let's use this oscillator. Which will control the way how this oscillator works. And now, let's use this sine wave, which is or maybe no, let's use the saw wave. And let's start to control the decay of the envelope generator. Let's also work with the depth of changing this parameter by the LFO. And you see, it's getting quite chaotic. So I have a mixer. So let's send this saw to the mixer. And this, let's route back to the controlling input of the decay of the envelope. And now, let's check. All right. We can mix a few signals. Let's take, for instance, let's take this signal. And I said this signal, and no one said, hey man, which signal? You see, this sequencer allows me to generate 3 sequences. And I took just one of them. And now, let's check what will happen if I will put it here. Nah, it makes no sense. So this whole work with modular is also about the decisions, whether sounds interesting or not. If not, then simply we'll disconnect the connection. Yeah, it makes no sense. Then we'll go in some different directions. Now let's use this small effect and let's put some reverb. And now let's check what will happen if I will start to modulate the attack of this envelope. Maybe it will be interesting. And let's use this. Or let's use this module. This module allows me to create the oscillator out of envelope generator. Rise and fall. If we will make it cycle, then it's just an oscillator. So let's use it. And now let's introduce kind of a drum sound. So I have here a module which not only may be used as an oscillator, which will simply generate the waveform and will create a melody or some other tonal harmonic stuff, but we can use it also as a drum sounds generator because it has built-in envelope. So if I will send here this what is called trigger or gate or pulse, the various developers use different names. If I will use, for instance, this signal, will generate the drum, but we don't want to generate this kind of drum. So, take a look. We have an oscillator, and this is the low frequency oscillator. And you see, here is the frequency of the way how this oscillator generates various waveforms, the sine wave, the sawtooth wave, the square wave. We will use this as a clock, as a something which will allow us to synchronize the next elements of the patch. So let's use it. And here I have the pulse. And now I will use this pulse to generate the slower pulses, because this is the clock divider. And the function of the clock divider is to simply divide the tempo, the frequency. We can use the prime numbers, we can use the numbers from 2 to 8. Let's use prime numbers. And now let's use the division of 5. And let's use the trigger. At this point, I wouldn't buy this record. Let's see. Let's use this mixed signal which we have created from the gate signal and from the LFO, which oscillates in quite high frequency. Let's use this signal and let's try to modulate the way how the resonance of the filter flows. And the resonance is about putting an accent on the center frequency shown by the frequency knob of the filter. All right, something finally is showing up. And now, this module, which you see as the black one, the last one in the rack, this is the module which now is set in the mode which allows me to put the reverb to the incoming sound. And one of the modes refers to the feedback, how we will work with the way of processing this reverberation. And let's deal with this. And let's use the filter. And let's maybe use the copy of, maybe not, yeah, let's try the copy of the signal generated by this oscillator, because I want to stay in tune. Let's check what will happen. Listen to this, what is happening now. This quite harsh sound is an effect of putting specific for this function signal. I should use something calmer here. But if I will use this intense sound generated by the oscillator, it starts to behave in a way which is absolutely beautiful for me. But shows the principle which I have mentioned, that we have only one signal. We shouldn't follow the thoughts that for this kind of input, like here, I should use this kind of signal. The very heart of working with the modular system, as I understand it, is about connecting everything with allowing to create also the feedback loops and control them. Because then sometimes, like here, beautiful things may show up. And let's check the second output of this filter, because now we operate the low pass and high pass, and maybe you remember we have said that filtering sound is about taking off the harmonics, making sound dark or bright. So taking off the higher frequencies or the lower frequencies. But I will use this BP output. Here is BP. It means the band pass. So we will take simultaneously the lower and the higher harmonics. And let's check. Maybe it will sound nice. Sounds nice. And now let's try to put some life into this. So let's connect with this principle I've mentioned, that we have the audible signals and the control signals. So all right, which signal I should use? Help me. The sequencer, all right. We have 3 sequencers, so we'll try to use the second one. This, which is described with the letter Y. First I need to turn on the sequencer, so I will use one of the signals, which I have here, to turn on the signal. So, take a look. First, let's put this envelope generator in the cycle form. So, we will have the gates. You see? It works. And now, let's make the sequencer work in a more crazy way. So let's use, for instance, this signal. It's good. I find it extremely inspiring to sometimes completely get lost in this whole situation. I feel that it's very nutritious to simply forget what's happening here, because it's about the control, but sometimes I would say that it's about also losing control a bit. And let's simply check what will happen here. Now, take a look. This sequencer works in more chaotic way. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower. And now, let's modulate because now we were modulating the way how this slope of the envelope rises. So now let's try to modulate the way how it falls. Should it be very short or maybe longer? So let's use maybe let's use this oscillator, but in the very slow form. Okay, you see, something is happening. It would be really nice to have the random voltage generator, because then we could mess things up a bit more, but I couldn't bring it with me this time, so let's now use this sequencer. And let's start to control the way how this sound behaves. See, now I do it completely randomly. This sequencer allows me to quantize the signals. What does it mean, quantize? That the signal which is generated by this oscillator, because of the quantizer which is built in, allow me to generate the actual notes. So we can build scales, we can tune our oscillator and play pure melodies. Yeah, so let's check if this method will be interesting. And now let's change the way how this sequence flows. All right, so take a look. This signal, the way how the filter works is controlled by the sequencer. But I have also the possibility of adding here one more control voltage. So let's try to do it. And let's slow things up a bit. So I will switch this oscillator to the very subtle oscillation. And remember I said that we can use various modules in various ways and realize and perform some functions with them. And this amplifier allows me to use the signal generated by the oscillator. Yeah, I will plug it to the channel, let's say 4. And now I will plug this output. to the control voltage input of the filter. And now this knob, which is connected to the volume of this signal, will simply allow me to change the amplitude, the gain of the signal generated by the oscillator. Let's check it. And also this is the moment when the beauty of this way of working shows up, at least for me, that using this, what is called the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier, allows me to put the control signal inside, and now I could use the CV, the control voltage input here, to control the amplitude of the control signal. Yeah? So let's use something slow. So I will put this envelope generator in the cycle mode, and let's create very slow oscillating voltage. And now, take a look. Modular synthesizers, modular systems allows us to deal with things on meta levels. So I have this control voltage knob, which is connected to the depth of the control signal, which will be putting to life the signal which is connected to this input number 4. Yeah? So I will turn it on to the maximum. And on the other hand, I have here the output of this envelope generator, which can create the envelope which will rise from the 0 point to, let's say, 0.1, or from 0 to -1. Here I will not be able to deal with this plus and minus ways, because this module allows me only to go up. But this is also a part of the modular system and work with modular systems, that we have plus and minus. Each signal can go up or down if the specific module allows us to generate this kind of signal. But let's go back to our patch. So now I am setting the amplitude of the signal generated by this envelope generator, and I'm able to control the depth of modulation of the way how the filter works. And why did I do it this way? Because now we can play with this knob. it's easier for me than play with this. So you see, we can also send some functions from one module to another to control, in fact, the same thing, but in more convenient way. Or, like here, you see, we could go also down, but here, I think we will not be able to do it. But in fact, let's check. Maybe we are. No, because this is unipolar. I said unipolar. So unipolar means that we go in one direction. Bipolar would mean that we can go from the plus values to minus. And now, let's try to repeat one thing. That we've said that each oscillator generates the waveform with specific frequency. So the same is with this drum module. Let's name it drum module. So let's listen only to the drum. So now if I will use, for instance, this envelope generator. So the kick is triggered, launched by this pulse. So let's use this pulse to launch the envelope generator. And now let's use this envelope, which rises and falls, to deal with the frequency of this oscillator, and let's check what will happen. Now I will make the decay longer. Now our drum is more visible. So this is the way how we can deal with the stuff. And as I said before, I prepared for you the virtual rack. You just need to download the VCV rack. This is a free software. And then you'll be able to try to repeat. No, try. You'll be able to create your own patch. And if you'll find some problems with the way how to do it, just remember these principles which I have mentioned about the subtractive synthesizer. Try to repeat it. Read about this if you'll forgot how to do it. And then if you'll be able to generate quite a solid sound which you understand how to control, then start to sculpt with new signals which comes from different modules. And then nice things will happen. Thank you.
I hear myself. So thanks, Michał, for inspiring presentation and also a performance, I would say.
Oh yeah.
So in a moment, we will see a QR code that you can scan with your phones and then put the questions for Michał so he can answer. But we can already see the first few. First one of those is, can MIDI clock control BPM of all setup through CV? Do we need some conversion maybe?
Thank you for this question. Who asked that question?
Make techno slow again.
Slow again. Oh, interesting. Very nice, interesting thought. So the question is about the MIDI clock. It's about the MIDI signal. Can MIDI clock control BPM of all setup? I mean, yeah, I assume that it means the modular setup through CV. Do we need some conversation? Yes, we need a module which will understand the MIDI signal. MIDI signal, I assume that some of you maybe not be familiar with this concept. MIDI signal is the universal signal to control hardware, to connect hardware with laptops, to connect synthesizers with sequencers, etc. So using this MIDI clock, which may be generated by, for instance, the drum machine, we can connect to this modular system, but we need a module which will translate the signal for the control voltage. So when we will have this module which translate the MIDI signal to the control voltage, then we can use this signal for, as you saw, for whatever reasons. We can control it as a clock generator. We can control the way how modules work just using the notes which we can play on the keyboard and then connect to the filter and control the way how it behaves. So answering for your question, MIDI clock can control the BPM, the tempo, or can synchronize the modular system, but we will need a specific module which will be able to translate the MIDI protocol to control voltage. Yeah, and I think it's...
Okay, so the next question, I think, is from India's. So how do you approach the integration with the analog wave that you create with your final projects? Do you record it into DAW and then produce on top?
Thank you, Indias, for question. This is a very good one because working with modular synthesizer is quite an adventurous one. So sometimes I simply connect this system, this setup to Ableton. I synchronize it with this module which I mentioned a moment before, and then I do some recording. I record what's happening here, but I would also suggest to record something what we create, even if it not fits to the tempo of the project in Ableton, for instance. And then let's chop it, let's slice it, let's use it as a samples, and then let's do something with this in the sampler, in laptop or whatever. And my advice, because you ask about the advice, would be to synchronize the system with Ableton on one hand and completely forget about the synchronizing this. To simply record some melodies, some drones, some effects, and then sometimes even time stretch these recordings to fit the tempo of the project, and then during the time stretching we will change the harmonic content of the recording, because the algorithms of the time stretch, for instance in DAW, will change the way how it sounds. So it may be very interesting. So my advice would be record it into a DAW in a synchronized way, but also to record it into the DAW without the synchronization, and also just use the recorder, or even better, the tape recorder, and unplug the system from our studio, put it somewhere else, and try to integrate the new space into the creative project, because sometimes the space brings a lot of ideas and takes us off from the way how we are used to behave while producing music. I, for instance, love to compose music in cafes or in trains. So I hope that
That's a good advice.
Answered.
Yeah. I guess let's go to the anonymous question, which is kind of popular, I would say. What's the best module to buy first? And what is the minimum setup required?
This is really tough question, because the modular systems, the world of modular synthesizers and samplers and all the modular stuff is quite expensive, and sometimes it may be quite tough to get into. So I would see now two ways. First is to simply try to collect some of the essential modules which will allow us to realize, to bring to life a specific idea which we can describe. And sadly, I cannot point the module which will be the best bought first, because if we will buy the oscillator first, we will be simply generating very hot waveform, which will be quite tough to work with using, for instance, the audio interface or mixer. If we'll buy the envelope generator, we need something which will launch the envelope. So it's quite complicated, but on the market there are a lot of semi-modular synthesizers which can introduce us to the world of this deep modular systems, and maybe that would be the solution, to simply buy the synthesizer, the semi-modular synthesizer, which allows us to work with several modules packed in one unit, and then maybe this would allow us to dive into this modular way of thinking, of performing, maybe. So this is sadly tough question, and the best solution, in my opinion, is to. This is what I have done years before. I was borrowing some money to my very close person, and one day this person was able to give back the money, and I simply sent the invoices, and the money was transferred to the shop, not to me. So if we are able to buy a few modules, then for sure we need to buy an oscillator, we need to buy the filter, the VCA module, the envelope generator, the sequencer, LFO, or the semi-modular synthesizer. You see, this is quite complicated. It's not easy to point which is the best at the beginning.
So you mentioned the 6 modules. So that is enough.
Yeah.
For the beginning.
Could you repeat the question?
Like you mentioned the 6 modules now. So that is enough for the beginning.
It's, yeah, it's maybe quite enough. But you see, we need a bit more of the stuff to be able to create something alive. So that's why I've mentioned the semi-modular synthesizer. And on the market, there are some nice synthesizers, semi-modular synthesizers, which are sometimes not that expensive, which can give us that glimpse of this more complex world. So I think that this is the answer. I'm sorry that I cannot point it more precisely.
It's understandable. So let's move to the question from Halvard. How do you make your patches playable for a live setting?
That is a good question and tough one. I usually use my modular system in the studio, so I do my best to create each patch. This, what we were doing, is called the patch. Yeah. So while I'm working with the modular system, I do my best to create every patch in a way that it allows me to play with. So I would say that this patch was also playable, but I am more interested in creating every time from scratch. So when I will disconnect these cables, again, we will lose it, and I will rather not try to recreate it. So when I perform with the modular synthesizer, I simply create something like today, and I would rather, if that would be some a bit bigger performance, I would rather use the second rack like this one to be able to go deeper and and introduce some other timbres and rhythms and maybe melodies. And I would also use, for instance, the Octatrack or the laptop to be able to follow the things which are happening in the modular world with, for instance, with drums or some pads or whatever. So I do my best to create every patch in a way that it's playable. But I am rather using the modular in the studio setup. So I don't think about patches in terms of live performances. But on the other hand, I perform with the patches. So sorry for not that straight question answer.
Also, I guess you have partially answered Carolina's question. She was asking, do you ever use live music making in front of the audience?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she loves your performance aspect.
And I would say that this is the very heart of my music presence on the scene, yeah? That even if I play the hybrid sets, what does it mean, hybrid? It means that I use the tracks of artists I admire, I love, and then I also use the drum machines, even if virtual. I use the drum machines, I use some synthesizers in Ableton because I use Ableton to deal with hybrid situations. So every time I create something which is an answer to the mixture of signals which are created by the moment. So, yeah, I use live making during the performances.
So I guess it's just a message for you that this beautiful sculptured signals fits perfectly to Monument Festival.
Oh, thank you.
Have you ever performed in this festival?
No.
So it's a message to Monument promoters, I guess.
Thank you very much.
To invite Michał one day.
Maybe.
So yeah, Corsi asks, do you have a list of iPad apps you are using?
Oh, I know this guy. So, my best greetings to you. Do you have a list of iPad apps you're using? Sadly, I have like dozen of folders full of iPad apps because I treat this unit as an instrument. This is for me like the regular instrument, and the latest EP, which was released by Southern Lights Records with remixes by Arose and Polygonia. Both two original tracks were created in quite a big part in the cafes on iPad, but later, the processing is the probably 80% of it. But this is one of the toughest questions I can imagine, because iPad or Android, because Android also is getting more and more ready for music production. iOS is allowing us to use such amount of absolutely wonderful apps to create beats, sounds with this, like synthesizers or samplers or granular synthesizers, whatever, that it's really hard to point any of them. This is a really tough question. Do you have a list of iPad apps you're using? For sure, I can tell you that I use like the AUM, I use the Beatmaker, I use Drumbo, I use the elastic drums, I use goes, I use the note, patterning, sampler. Come on, it's like Hilda, layer, Skid, Strokes, Velvet Machine, KB1. Come on, this is quite a tough question. It's a lot, and I suggest you, if you use these mobile devices, tablets, just dive into this world, because this is something what makes electronic music for me more like more like dealing with acoustic instruments. So I take it to the cafe, I take it to the train, to the airplane, whatever, and I create music with this. And the applications which you can use in the mobile world are nowadays extremely high quality. You can use it really as a source of serious stuff. So if you use the tablet, dive into this. And I also suggest you going into the modular world. Today, when I was getting to the place where we meet today, I created this patch using the MI rack. And this is absolutely amazing thing that you can create this, that you can put to life these modular ideas using this piece of, let's name it, hardware. MI rack. MI rack.
Okay, so another anonymous question. Can you share the list of modules you used here?
Yes, we have used the Basimilus Iteritas Alter, we have used the DPO, we have used the dual oscillator model 258T by Buchla and Tiptop. We have used the tides by Mutable Instruments, we have used the ripples, we have used the A124 VCF5 by Doepfer, we have used the A135 number 2 also by Doepfer, we have used the Distinct by the Expert Sleepers. Maybe let's say that this Basimilus Iteritas Alter is made by Noise Engineering, the DPO is made by Make Noise. Then we have the Clock Divider A160-2 by Doepfer. We have the Batumi by House Devices. We have René 2 by Make Noise. We have Quad Function Generator 281T by Buchla and Tiptop. Then we have Mats by Make Noise and A138 by Doepfer. This is the mixer. So, come on. We have used almost all of them. Yeah.
Pretty extensive.
Nah, let's...
So yeah, do you have a time for a few more questions maybe? I guess the next will be from Rob. How are you outputting the modular to the mixer? Can you output directly, or do you need a special module to convert the signal level?
This is a very good question. And yes, we should use the module to convert the signal level first. I have used here the Distinct module, which was set in the reverb mode, and I was controlling all the time the power, the gain of the signals. So I was able not to damage this beautiful mixer. But yes, it would be nice to have the module which will show up before the, for instance, audio interface in the computer or the mixer. Here I have used the distinct as an output module. It's maybe not a risky way of dealing with things, but it would be nice to have the module, the output module. But to be honest, I prefer to have like another filter instead of this kind of module. So it would be good to have this one. But if you'll control, Rob, if you'll control the gain of the signal you create with your modular system, you will create a good job. So it's all about the control of the gain.
Funny question. Is the analog modulars still better than emulators?
I would say that the best modules and the best instruments and the best sound generators are these which bring the music ideas. So if someone can create interesting, complex music with calculator, then I would go for it. So I wouldn't use the term better. I would rather use the term the ones which you prefer and the way how you use them.
Okay, so then P1 from Norway again asks, when did you start with modulars? And how long are you doing this?
To be honest, I was working with the modular ideas before I bought my first modules, and it was like maybe 7 years ago. So I'm quite fresh in this world, maybe 7, 8 years, 7, 8, yeah, something like this. But I was working with modular ideas using the reactor by Native Instruments. And it is quite expensive stuff. So it's not easy to dive into the world of modular systems. But I would say that these are the ideas which create music, not the equipment. So if we are not able to buy modules in the physical format, we still can start dealing with these ideas using the virtual modulars. And then we'll bring to life interesting sounds. But answering to the question, I started with modulars first, virtual, long years ago, I don't remember, and with this more physical format, probably 7, 8 years ago, something like this, I think.
Anonymous asks, are you able to recreate faithfully a patch again?
I never recreated faithfully a patch, even non-faithfully. Sometimes it's possible to bring to life something quite, maybe not similar, but quite close to the thing we were working on like day before. But it's most because of the modules we use and the sonic quality of the sound generated by the modules. And sometimes this is my experience. So maybe someone else sees that differently. But sometimes I see the sound inspiring, and the timbre of sound sometimes puts me to the point where I start create specific rhythms or specific melodies or specific patches. But I never recreated a patch, even though I have a lot of photos of patches which I had to recreate, and it's not recreated.
Impossible, so to say.
You know, sometimes it's really impossible when things are getting more complex, and when we see the feedbacks, yeah, that one module controls the other, but the other controls the one which controls this. Things are changing in a specific way, which is really hard to repeat and to recreate. So sometimes it's easier to create something what is more or less similar or close to, but usually it's rather, for me, impossible. So yeah, this is like my answer.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, unfortunately, that's all the time we have tonight for all the questions. Thanks again, Michał, for coming to Vilnius.
Thank you.
And to bringing all your setup. And I hope to see you soon somewhere
Thank you very
in
much.
the Monument Festival.
Thank you very much for the... Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for your presence here. That was a huge honor for me, because I believe that this is absolutely beautiful world, and if our meeting would somehow push you to go into this way of thinking, which is sometimes absolutely non-linear, non-conventional, I would be happy. So thank you very much for having me here, and maybe we'll meet somewhere soon again. Thank you.